Last week saw the winter solstice, an occurrence celebrated in some form or another in the history of nearly every human culture. But what is this light that we venerate? What is this light that we celebrate? What is this light? It is the sun, yes. But if it can be said that there is more, then it is more than just the sun. More than the sun, which inspires a peculiar idea. Can it be said that there is more to life than life? Can it be said that there is more to life than life? What I mean is that there is certainly no life on earth without sun. So the sun roughly equates to life. But I just proposed that the solstice was about more than the sun, which means more than life, or at least more than staying alive. And so the question morphs to, is there more to life than life? Is there more to life than life? I say yes. Now surely, whatever it is that is more depends on life, as life depends on the sun. As the sun makes life, life makes something more than itself. It makes meaning. What is this light? It's a light that comes from our ancestors as much as the sun. And all ancestors know winter. All ancestors know longer nights than days. We have always made meaning from our conditions. In the same way that trees turn chlorophyll into food, we take our conditions, or turn sunlight into food. We take our conditions and make meaning. And so we celebrate light. When it is most dim, it becomes precious and gathers unto itself more and more meaning. They layer one upon another. We clothe this light in arrangements of stone and ritual and story. We hang upon it prayers and lessons, graft onto it holidays of revel and import, Saturnalia, Hanukkah, Christmas. Christmas is a story of light brought forth. It is the tale of a Messiah, a life giver, a light in the dark. That he was born in the northern hemisphere's winter is an appropriation of solstice veneration, recast to make Christianity appealing to the ancient heathens and Romans and pagans who marked the solstice with religious and civic significance. And now, today, in this tradition, we Northerners have become heathenistic again and look to turn the tables and milk the sun from the birth story of Christ. But here's a question. Whose story is that anyway? I mean, who's the protagonist of the Bible story? Who is the hero? God? But people who say God is the hero of this birth story could say that God is the hero of every story, which makes saying that God is the hero of any story rather meaningless. Now, if it's helpful for you to center God in this story or in any story, what I might say is that the hero in this and all stories is the human who takes on the burden of God's way, the human who takes on the perspective of the divine. Is that, in this birth story, Jesus? Is Jesus the hero here? I mean, I suppose getting born is hard. I was born, or so I've been told. I don't actually remember it. I can't prove it, I suppose. There's no photographic evidence of the event taking place as it happened. My mom remembers, though. But she makes up all kinds of stories. I remember seeing my daughter's births. That was quite a story. And they worked for it. Some. Most of their work happened after they popped out. Me, I was next to Katie eating a sandwich and cheering Mom on when my mouth wasn't full. It was dinner time. But it wasn't work. But Katie, I have never seen anyone work that hard, nor with stakes that high. And we drove to the hospital. It's not like we rode a donkey for hundreds of miles. Actually, when I looked it up, it said 97 miles from Nazareth to Jerusalem. Light traffic, an hour and 51 minutes. But that was on Friday. Probably quicker right now. But not then. Not on a donkey. Not on a donkey 9 months pregnant and on the move because some paranoid tyrant decided he needed you to leave your home. The hero of Christmas is Mary. And there is deep wisdom here in this story, especially seen through the lens of Mary as hero. And one wonders if Luke, the writer of this, the only gospel that contains the story of the birth, knew what he was doing literarily. Was he just playing with tropes? Virgin birth, angels on high, kings from afar, tyrants near to hand. These are standard cliches of old world storytelling. Or as a physician, was he just, going with the biology? Jesus was born, had to be born of a woman, king of man, born of an egg, just won't cut it from a medical perspective. Or was something in him moving on a deeper level, beyond the literary tropes and the biological necessity? Was something more meaningful, more universal, bubbling up through the ancient doctor's immersion in the religious trance of the mythic? I don't know if anyone can say. I know I can say that I don't know. But as a writer myself, I could promise you that it doesn't so much matter what Luke was up to. The reader or hearer composes half the tale, or sermon reflection, for that matter. So let us do exactly that with this, the story of Mary giving birth. Let's think about it mythologically. Given that this story is a gloss on the solstice, Joshua, who we know as Jesus, is the sun. S-U-N. He, like the sun, is the hope come in the midst of hopelessness. He, like the sun, is the promise of life. Like the sun, this baby is not strong right now, but represents the dispelling of the present gloom, be that hemispheric or political or spiritual. He, like the sun, is an eternal being, we are told, made terrestrially relevant. What is this light? It is a promise, and so a comfort. It is a reliability beyond the human, and so it is a hope unable to be diminished. It is a connection. This story is a connection with the divine, the holy, the life-creating and sustaining presence, by whatever name you call that. But it is ours to deliver. Note that there is no point in the story where the mother is passive. She carries the weight of potential. Birth is a labor and indicates a human agency in bringing forth the light. The light is there, is here, but we must birth it. The heroic act is not a conquering or a vanquishing or an overcoming or a substitution of one oppression for the next. It is by accepting, persisting, laboring, birthing, and nurturing that the Savior's Son, S-U-N, is brought into existence. We are invited by the tale to cultivate the motherly characteristics within each of us. These characteristics of connection and nurture, of love and protection and vulnerability. We meet promise with promise, fear with comfort, cold with our bodies, and vulnerability with vulnerability. And thereby, we establish an integration, an integrity. That is our work. That is how we give birth to the sun. That is how we create a light in the dark of midwinter. Thinking about integrity reminds me of a time when I was talking to a disaffected religious person. I told him, quite hopefully, that my tradition is filled with people who found a spiritual home after their traditions had disappointed them, filled with the disaffected religious, now sanctuary to them. I asked him, why did you leave your tradition? And it was a familiar litany. You maybe have heard it yourself when talking to similar folk. The critique was, it was a shallow spirituality, kind of hypocritical. They didn't really practice what they professed, he said. It was more of a social club of self-righteousness. And he was like, if they aren't going to believe what they say they believe, why should I? And so I told him, that I hear this all the time about faiths people left before they found ours. And he became excited and said, "Oh, and what religion are you?" I said, You. And he said, "So was I." Our values. What is a value anyway? That's a reflection for another sermon, perhaps. But it is clear that our professions do not save us. The inherent worth and dignity of all people, the interdependent web of existence, too often mere platitudes. More so when we say them than when we listen to them. Listening to them, we stand a better chance of being claimed by them. And when they say us, rather than we saying them, we will have fathomed their transformative power and given birth to a new being, the Christ in all of us, the perpetual and promised Son. S-U-N. Until then, our principles are only in utero, undemonstrated potential to bear on our journey. We must labor to give birth to being, to meaning in motion. And like birth, the process will be equal parts grace and good hard work, and not likely to be done in solitude. The light is here, but we must birth it. The heroic act here is not conquering or vanquishing or overcoming or replacing one oppressor with the next. It is accepting, persisting, laboring, birthing, and nurturing that sun, that light, that promise, the hope, so that we could bring it into existence. The tale invites us to cultivate the motherly characteristics of connection, nurture, love, protection, vulnerability. We meet promise with promise, fear with comfort, cold with our bodies, and vulnerability with vulnerability, and thereby we establish our integration and integrity. That is our work. But how do we do this? We listen to our values rather than profess them. We allow ourselves to be claimed by them, that they might live in us, so that we may be a demonstration of them rather than think that they are a demonstration of we. We practice acceptance and vulnerability, persistence and labor, gentleness, nurturing in all our relationships. When you go home today, you practice these characteristics with the quality or with the person you go home with, or the first person you see. When the call comes, from whatever guise the angel Gabriel takes, we answer. Last night, that call came from Reverend Nancy Reed McKee, a UU minister currently living in Arizona. ICE had just dropped 300 migrants off in Tucson with little to no resources. The agency let Casa Alitas know, Casa Alitas being an organization that finds housing and resources for migrants as they make their way to their final destination. They would need $5,000 to cover expenses for the next few days, $5,000 that they didn't have. Reverend Nancy set a goal that Arizona UUs could raise $1,000 for them. And so we put the word out. With the help from Jane Paul, MVUU got the word to many of you. With short notice. But the response was extraordinary. If you contributed to that call, could you please stand up? Not for adulation or praise, but just stand up to demonstrate what the mechanics of kindness look like. Please remain standing as I read the note I got from Reverend Nancy earlier today. Reverend Reed McKee wrote, "Wow. Just saying, I have got more than 3,000 in donations or pledges so far, and this is largely due to MVUU. I would guess that over $1,500 came from MVUU. Please tell the congregation their generosity, so your generosity is a blessing on the community." Thank you. You can sit down. By the way, it's not too late. $3,000 is only about half the money they'll need. And if you haven't seen it yet, check your email inboxes, or you could look at my personal Facebook page to make that connection. This is the kind of integrity that opens the door of the inn, so to speak. It is a light in a dark midwinter. It is proof that there is more to life than life. There is love. There is meaning that we craft from our circumstance that shapes the way we live and the lives around us. There is listening until we are claimed. And our actions in the interconnected world web and our relationship to it changes. It is a sun, a cosmos, a child that we give birth to. And it's odd to say, but in this case, I feel that we are both mother and child. This is the light. Our solstice. Please rise and body or spirit join as one in singing Mother of All. It's hymn number 91 in your hardback hymnal.